Here's an article that I received from one of my reporters that I believe sums up what will ultimately happen in the Middle East when Russia comes down and takes on Israel. And we know that is a biblical event because basically it's in the Bible. And frankly, I want you to know that's how I get my prophecy. I don't get it from some crazy guy off of YouTube or listen to somebody who's had a vision or a dream or whatever the case may be. But I strictly go by what the Bible says, and that's how I get my prophecy. And my advice to you is to do the same thing. Somebody tries to tell you they've had some type of dream or some vision or whatever the case may be, and you've watched this video on YouTube, run from it as quickly as you can. Here's what the article says. It says, Russia under President Vladimir Putin has reverted to the days of the Soviet Union on some key issues. This has resulted in more disagreement with Israel and competing interests. The fact that Russia is once again pursuing a more active role in the Middle East attests to the change. As early as the 1770s, Russia wanted to get its feet wet in the warm waters of the region, but it abandoned its efforts throughout the 30 years that preceded the Six-Day War. And since then, they've been pretty well quiet in the Middle East, up until the late 1990s and now on into the year beyond 2000 and somewhere in this year, for that matter. They have delved their way in just to the Middle East through Syria. And going on with the article says Moscow's involvement in the Arab-Israeli conflict peaked in 1970 during the War of Attrition. That year, Israeli fighter jets downed Russian MiGs over the Sinai, and Israel began to take a look at what the Soviet Union was doing in Egypt. The Israeli clash with the Soviets ultimately ended when a ceasefire was announced. Now the Russians are back and have already sent a small contingent to Syria, but the political climate is different. Unlike in 1967, Israel or Jerusalem and Moscow are not estranged and have diplomatic relations. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will visit the Russian capital next week to see if he and Putin can draw a line in the Middle East sand. Russia has indicated that it does not want to have a spat with Israel, only to help Syrian Bashar al-Assad regime fight the Islamic State group, which it considers much more dangerous. Russia is right in its assessment. Defense ministers from both Israel and Moscow are probably right now at this time talking with their Russian counterparts to determine their moves and set red lines. But the reality on the ground is such that no one can predict how things will unfold. And that's basically the truth of the matter right there. You know, even though we feel that there's probably not going to be some type of war between Israel and Moscow and along with Iran, and it even seems that even more difficult to see how Turkey is going to play into this. But the Bible has already said that this will take place. And even though we can't figure it out at this point in time how that will all come together, we know that the players are now beginning to be put into place. Both Russia and Iran are partners in Syria and are building a contingency and troops along with heavy equipment right now as we speak. But going on with the article, it says Israel, which would like to preserve its air supremacy in Syria, may accidentally slide toward a confrontation with the Russians if things get out of hand. To make things worse, Russia has also become more hostile to Israel on the global stage. The new Russian posture goes beyond the peace process with the Palestinians, and it was clearly on display this week when Russia endorsed the Arab plan to send inspectors to Israel's Dimona reactor. Russia would like to avoid a clash with Israel, but the fact of the matter is that things could ultimately deteriorate and lead to a situation that Netanyahu and Ya'alon, as well as Putin and his army, would like to avoid, especially if Russia's effort to protect Assad fails. So the point I'm trying to make is even the world sees that there's a possibility that this Russian experiment or Russian protection of al-Assad could very well go wrong. And the possibility of an Israeli-Russian war is possible. So I would keep my eyes on this particular situation because it's certainly not out of the question that a war could break out. Now, the Bible says in Ezekiel 38 that it will be Russia's idea to come down upon Israel to try to take a spoil. It'll be like having hooks in Russia's mouth that they simply can't avoid this spoil, and it will be too great for them to walk away from. So the war won't be started by Israel, but it will be started by Russia and Iran. And the Bible does say that Turkey would be involved as well, along with a number of other Islamic nations. And as I've said earlier, that even though we can't seem to be able to figure out how this is ultimately going to play out, the Bible does say that it will, and these are the nations that will be involved. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what the world is thinking, and that even they believe that there is a possibility that war could break out between these two particular factions that are now trying to guard their interest and to keep the other from any type of invasion. And you can bet your life that Israel's on high alert on its northern border. They're not leaving anything to chance, and they're certainly not leaving anything to speculation. And if you don't know the Lord, today is the day of salvation. Don't put it off. The Bible says that we're all going to stand before God. And 150,000 people die every single day. The vast majority of the Bible says will end up in a burning hell. Don't let that happen to you, and don't make that mistake, because once you're in hell, there's no coming out. So I would encourage you to make your decision for Christ today. And you Christians, you need to get a copy of my Tribulation Period Survival Guide. The book is free, but I also provide a paperback version for those who like to hand this particular book to their lost friend or loved one. I would encourage you to hand a book to your lost loved one, because if you don't tell your friends and loved ones once you're gone how they need to get through this tribulation period that's coming, the world certainly will. And what they're going to tell them is that they will need to take the mark of the beast. So don't leave that to chance. I would get a copy of this book, give it to your friends and your loved ones, so that one day when this time does come, they will be prepared and they'll know exactly what to do. Well, this is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.